Good morning, all, or afternoon if you're coming here from New Zealand. Thank you for joining us today. So, we're going to kick things off. We're going to discuss our partner spotlight today. We've got two of my partners that I've been working with for quite some time to sort of help discuss how to grow your MSP business and with vulnerability assessment and monitoring. This is going to be heavily focused around ConnectSecure, which is one of the solutions that we provide here at Pax8. But this can a lot of the structures and a lot of the backend can be supported by any vulnerability tool that you might be using today. So I thought as we get started, just want to sort of throw up a few quotes that are very relevant to the topic at hand. If it's smart, it's vulnerable, right? This goes to any types of technology out there. There's always a potential for vulnerabilities in anything that we use when it comes to technology. When it comes to cybersecurity, it generally takes 20 years to build up reputation, right? That's from a business perspective or anything else, but only takes a few minutes or a cybersecurity incident to ruin it, right? So that's where cybersecurity is pressing for many partners today. And why vulnerability management will become one of those things that is effectively a security 101 type process. Make sure that you're bundling that into your security solutions and your strategy moving forward. I think the most apt one, a little bit of humor in there, is never underestimate a developer with a deadline. One of the probably main reasons why we're having these discussions today, because a lot of that is through bad code and developers just not doing the right thing. So a lot of that's going to be changing with some new regulations. But let's get into it. So the agenda today, I'll start off with a few introductions and introduce my guests. And then we're going to cover off, why vulnerability management is so important and why you should be looking at it. I'll give you a general overview around ConnectSecure and what it provides and how you can take advantage of it. And then we'll jump into the sort of meat of the session today, which is covering that partner spotlight. I'll be speaking to Corp Computers and CS1 Group around what they did to implement ConnectSecure and a vulnerability management strategy within their business and how that looks. And then we'll sort of go through a few sort of roundtable panel type questions where we'll have an open discussion around some key points and see common questions that get raised when I speak to partners around ConnectSecure. And then we'll finish up with some pricing and next steps. So this session is recorded, so you'll have access to it after the fact as well, and it will be made public on our website and our public channels. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A tab within your Teams meeting. If you have any questions for either of our guests, feel free to throw them in. We may not be able to cover them all, but we'll make an effort to have our guests sort of run through that. So my name is Elliot Seeto. I am the Security Solutions Consultant here at Pax8, and I'm joined today by Alex Slade, who is the CEO of Corp, and Preyesh Odhavjee, sorry, mate, who's the director of the CS1 Group. And then we're going to discuss how they implemented ConnectSecure within their environments and some of the challenges that they face as part of that. Before we get into that, I want to sort of hammer down, the importance of vulnerability management. Right. So if you are following a framework of some sort, right, vulnerability management, patching, asset management, these are all foundational controls when it comes to security, right? And if you're looking at the various types of ones out there, right, more commonly for Australian partners and some New Zealand partners, they might be using something like the Essential 8, right? When you look at things like patching applications and patching OS, in them, their sub-controls have sort of key indicators around not just patching, but also the vulnerability scanning and being able to identify these on a periodic basis. If you're following things like CIS controls, which I talk a lot about as part of my consulting with a lot of partners, things like Control 1, Control 2, look at the inventory of the hardware and software assets. And then you've also got the Control 7, which is that continuous vulnerability management, which ConnectSecure fit nicely into. And then if you look at NIST, right, it's predominantly around the identify arm of NIST, but there is, with the patching and things like that, also has the ability to add some protect components as well. Right. I mentioned Security 101 before. So vulnerability management assessment is considered basic security hygiene, right? Vulnerabilities are generally known and well-documented gaps in a network environment, and they should be regularly patched, right? These are low-hanging fruit that we can tick off and make sure that known vulnerabilities aren't exposed through bad actors and things like that. So types of vulnerability assessments that you can run, and many of these are included as part of the ConnectSecure, are things like network-based scans, host-based scans, wireless application and database scans as well. And these are generally conducted both internally and externally, right, to identify where all the gaps are. And that's changed also with things like work from home policies as well. Right? Cybersecurity insurance is also one of the key drivers as to why this is changing and why our approach to risk management needs to be looked at, and vulnerability management is a big part of that. Insurance companies are no longer, or insurance policies are no longer considered the primary safeguard. And that has changed over the last couple of years, but prior to that, a lot of clients are using insurance as their stopgap for security, right? Not implementing good structure in place. The reason why that's changing, right, is premiums for policies have risen by 4 times, right, since the last financial year. Claimable limits have also decreased by about 50% as well, right? So that's changing the way in our approach to cybersecurity in general. Insurers are also now conducting audit checks to make sure that end clients and even MSPs are adhering to common best practices out there. Policies, in some policies, there's also a requirement for vulnerabilities to be patched within 45 days or less. That's the big one when it comes to cybersecurity insurance, because they're effectively saying if you don't have this patch within a substantial amount of time, if you make a claim, we're going to use that to get out of our that claim. So those are important elements that you should be considering when sort of building out your security strategy and your security solutions. So why should you perform vulnerability assessments, right? So beyond the things that we just covered, right? Identifying vulnerabilities is effectively something we put in place so hackers can't find them and leverage them, right? Take advantage of them. Vulnerability assessments, scans, look at all the network components and basically verify if there's any weaknesses that cyber criminals can leverage, right? Attack an organization, cause a breach, steal information, or anything like that. It's also helping to prove to your customers, prospects, and other stakeholders in those organizations that all their systems are secure. You're following best practices, right? This is just to add assurance and even compliance to make sure that the entrusted data that a lot of you would manage from a day-to-day perspective and their assets associated with that are protected. Or at least from the baseline to make sure that those vulnerabilities, those known vulnerabilities, aren't exposed. So vulnerability assessment becomes key to that, right? And it gives you a strategic competitive advantage to make sure that you're providing that compliance and that assurance to your end clients. Obviously, evaluating the performance of third-party IT service providers. This is more important, obviously, for the end client. But how MSP should look at that is if there's any service providers and within your supply chain that you might be using, this is the way to sort of test out their sort of attack surface risk as well, allowing you to understand whether your third-party vendors that you might be using to support your end clients or your own business are also cross-checked and examined and make sure they're using sort of best practice examples and closing up their gaps within their suite of software. I mentioned compliance before, right? Many industry and regulatory requirements are becoming more prominent. They are changing with the times as well. There's also legislation going through government that might change the way we approach cybersecurity as well. So vulnerability assessment is critical to achieving certain security certifications like your SOC 2s and even sort of compliances like your ISO 27001s if you're looking at going and getting certified for your ISOs. Right. The biggest thing, though, comes down to saving time and costs, and these are particularly on if a breach occurs. So reducing your risk, particularly your attack surface risk, prevents those breaches from occurring through known vulnerabilities. They can be done from many fronts, but reducing those limitations and liabilities can be costly. But they will save you time and specific costs over time. If you do get a breach, right? There's a number of different costs associated with getting involved with, the ACSC. If you're in Australia and you need to register it, bringing in lawyers, and maybe federal government as part of that to sort of undertake a remediation plan. There's a lot associated risk with that. So the more you can do to prevent, right, these type of instances occurring, the better off you're going to be in the long term. You don't have to, what we call, deal with the effects of after the boom, right, after the incident actually occurs. So to give you an example of some vulnerability incidents that have occurred over the last past several months, these are common ones that you may have already seen. I'm pretty sure all of you on the call right now would have obviously seen the LastPass instance. So I'd probably won't need to cover that off, but just to give a high level, right? LastPass had a breach, right? Hackers stole their master password, and highly accessed highly restricted corporate databases and even source code for their backend software. But funnily enough, that breach wasn't occurred for a vulnerability for LastPass itself. While that's debatable, there was other things they could have put in place to prevent this. It was exposed through a vulnerability through a Plex server that was on a senior DevOps engineer's home PC. And he was using his home PC to log into LastPass's backend databases that he had access to, which is where the vulnerability occurred. Interestingly, right, this vulnerability was patched 2 years prior to this this incident taking place, which was Plex said was roughly 75 versions on the most updated patch that they had. Right, so that sort of highlights one of the key reasons why you should be patching you might be using. Move IT is a more recent one, right? On June 15th, Progress discovered a vulnerability on Move IT transfer that led to the escalation of privileges and potential unauthorized access into environments, right? The CLOP cybersecurity or cybercrime gang exploited that vulnerability to steal data and basically listed a lot of the impacted businesses on their dark websites and their data leak sites. Even New South Wales Health, as of 2 weeks ago, were one of the ones that were exposed. And, that's one of the largest organizations from a government perspective in New South Wales, which has a lot of PII type data. Right. I hope they patch it now. I haven't checked, but this shows that there are a lot of potentially impacted businesses that are using that. The most recent one is the Fortinet firewalls, and I know many partners who use these FortiGate firewalls for their own businesses. As of July 3rd, which was 2 days ago, over 300,000 FortiGate firewalls are still left vulnerable to date, right? Based on that known CVE, and that is a month after Fortinet actually released the update to address that particular bug in their environment, right? The 300,000 is still left vulnerable. And that CV is basically exploitable and allows unauthenticated attackers to basically execute code on vulnerable devices using the SSL VPN interface, right? That is exposed to the web. It's beyond comprehension that these still are left open because these are things that should be easily closed off, right? A known, well-documented vulnerability that could just be shut down by a simple patch being deployed. So these are, I could list a number of different ways. Microsoft is a big one, right? They release a lot of buggy software from time to time. So, a lot of partners are doing a pretty good job on patching them. There are a lot of other use cases out there to show why applications need to be patched on time and progressively. So I wanted to break down because a common question that partners generally ask me is, well, why don't I just run penetration testing instead of vulnerability management? There are key differences between the two, right? When you look at something like CIS controls as a framework, vulnerability management, right, is effectively aims to uncover vulnerabilities on a network and provide recommended appropriate mitigation remediation steps to reduce or remove those risks altogether. The CIS controls basically list that as one of the first things you should do, right? When you look at things like penetration testing in CIS controls, that's one of the last things you would look at, right? And the key reason there is, in contrast, penetration testing involves identifying vulnerabilities on networks and seeing if you can exploit it, right? Doing a stress test to see if I can break any of those and whether I can get through. Do vulnerabilities, have they been closed off, and can I actually get into the network? So effectively, the primary aim of penetration testing is to check whether a vulnerability really exists on that environment. And to help break it down, I'm going to use a little bit of analogy, and I encourage you to use this for your clients who ask you for a pen test and may not know what the difference is. This is a door, right? If I look at a door and use the vulnerability management as a part of this, what I'm looking at is, does that door have good hinges? Does that door have a lock on the door, right? That's going to tell me whether I've got a simple, basic security hygiene in place. What a pen testing tool is going to do is seeing whether I can take a sledgehammer to the door and whether that's going to hold up to it, right? Is there a lock on the door in the first place? If there's not, right, the pen test is always going to allow you to get through it and seep into it. And that's why a pen test is generally something that you would use as the final piece of the security package, because you have all these other things you want to put in place first before the need of a pen test arises, right? So I encourage you to use that as an example. That basically distills it down to a very basic level that almost everyone can understand, hopefully. Right. So now I'll sort of set the groundwork. I'll give you a sort of brief overview on what ConnectSecure is. So it is effectively a vulnerability and compliance management platform. All right. It is fully SaaS-based, centrally managed, and full multi-tenant vulnerability management system. It is an MSP platform designed by MSPs for MSSPs as well. And it is primarily to detect, manage, and protect your IT assets, right, for your SMB clients. What it adds in is that continuous monitoring elements, right, so that you can monitor the entire attack surface as well as work from home environments. It also assists with any compliance reporting for things like CIS controls, NIST, ISO, and even an Essential 8. And it helps identify misconfigured core systems on your servers, on your firewalls, and any other sort of IP devices as well. It's also going to provide remediation steps and help you prioritize them so that you can address those discovered vulnerabilities and address those compliance gaps as part of that as well. Right. When we look at how that applies to things like the CIS security framework, it's looking at the three of the ones I've already mentioned. So the inventory of unauthorized assets, hardware assets, and software assets. It's also going to provide the continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation plans. It's also going to look at things like administrative privileges and who has access to that. Secure configuration as well on your devices to make sure that that is up to scratch and up to a basic standard. Right. And these are the three sort of main components to it. Is one, first, knowing your network, right? And that is the ability to discover, basically use a probe to look for any sort of devices that might be on your network, right? Anything with an IP address effectively is what it's going to discover for you. Using that scanner to then assess the vulnerabilities and compliance posture to that. And it's also going to organize that by priorities, right, by severity, so that you can focus on the more important elements first, the more vulnerable, and then work your way down the line as needed. Then you would put in the management of risk, right? And this is using multiple databases, including NVD and CIS. You'll be able to run things like Active Directory audits or Azure Active Directory audits as well, including bringing in visibility to things like your secure score, so you don't have to tap into each individual tenant to retrieve that information. It's going to provide application baselines, compliance scans, PII, external IP scans. There is the latest add-in as well, which is the attack surface mapping, which allows you to basically, throw in a domain and basically scan and see what's exposed to from an external perspective, so that you can make sure that they're all covered as well. And that includes extensive reporting, which I'll cover off in a couple slides. The last piece is basically just the compliance piece, right? And this really comes down to continuous vulnerability monitoring in an automated perspective, where you can engage the automated schedules to give you a snapshot and provide alerting back to you to understand any changes that are happening on a frequent basis, whether that's an hourly, daily, or weekly basis. You can set up those scans in whatever cadence that's required for your particular end clients. right? And the alerting's there as well, which will obviously designed to notify you when those changes are made, and hopefully reduce some of the false positives as well with the customization that's included. It does have automated patching, which you can take advantage of, but many of you are probably using things like Intune or your RMMs to do the patching. But what it's going to help you do is help you validate those patching reporting as well to make sure that's all up to scale. Right. So it is fully multi-tenant. It has multiple integrations with common PSAs and RMMs and other tool sets. It is fully cloud-based, and it's designed to go across multiple platforms as well, including Windows, Mac, Linux, and ARM devices as well. Right. And generally, it's a low total cost of ownership as part of that, which we'll cover off in the pricing in the later stages. Right. My favorite piece about this is it also comes with unlimited security assessments, which you can run, and you can use this as part of your pre-sales engagements to sort of grow business and sort of target new opportunities out there. The idea is to sort of grow your revenue, whether it's for existing clients that haven't bought into your security plans, right, to show them some tangible data that you can work with. Or alternatively, it can use to be, go for net new business. If you're working on a client, maybe has their own MSP provider today and they're happy with them, but they're not delivering any security services, well, this could allow you to pivot to sort of focus on the security and hopefully sort of take the managed services on the back end after you become that trusted advisor. Right. So the reporting is designed to be very simple and engaging. It's a few pages, it's a dozen pages or so long for the assessment report, and it's going to condense it down to a nice, easy manner that you can deliver it and have an easy conversation with the end clients. Things like looking through sort of the key aspects, key vulnerabilities out there, allow you to sort of assess all the patching, what's vulnerable across all the devices, and you can see that it puts it in a sort of prioritized order as well. Right. And then looking for particular patches that might be exposed. So these are the key ones, and this is where ConnectSecure play really well, is allow you to sort of engage and understand that there are these missing elements in there, and these are the lowest hanging fruits that we can tick off and get your risk reduction in place from the get-go. So these can be used and in an unlimited manner and built into the ConnectSecure platform. There's a lot of things you can do out of the box as part of that. So now that I've covered off that piece, I'm going to invite Alex to sort of take us through, or you through, his sort of primary challenges that he saw, his business objectives out of that, and how ConnectSecure achieve the outcome that he was desiring as well. So, Alex, do you want to sort of take us through a step by step on what you saw?
Yeah, 100%. So, we're an end-to-end MSP. So, like most MSPs, sort of cybersecurity has become increasingly a vital part of the business and our stack of services. So much so that we're also treating that separately. So we've got clients that we're only doing cybersecurity services for, and they've either got an internal IT team or another provider, basically. So for us, we had a few things we were looking for. So the first one was onboarding of customers. For us was challenging. We deal with a wide variety of clients at different skill levels, different sizes. Some have some internal IT resources, most don't. So in onboarding processes and into the quoting and proposal process, we had to understand their environment quite in depth. So nothing sort of jumps out at us once they're a customer. So yeah, analyzing those environments, especially from a cybersecurity point of view, because that was driving most of the opportunities we were getting, coming to us. So look, ConnectSecure, the reports are in plain English for us, so that helped. We get the technical details on our end, but then the reports we can generate and include in our proposal are plain English for our customers, so we can just sort of step them through using, a grading system, traffic light style system as well, so they can see where they sort of sit in comparison to other organizations in similar fields and sizes. It's multi-tenanted, as Elliot said. So, we've got our tenant set up and we can very quickly spin up new customer sites in there. Under a minute, it's linked into our PSA. We use ConnectWise, so it can drag in customers from there and then link them up quite easily. So it just makes a really nice experience, especially to get people onboarded quickly. At the time when we were investigating with ConnectSecure, we didn't have an ongoing vulnerability management platform. Again, as Elliot was going through all the frameworks, it's a heavy part of what they're doing there. Having vulnerability scanning and management is pretty critical. We had our RMM platform, which is doing its patching as it should. But obviously, that's covering off our endpoints and our servers. What about, switches, firewalls, access points, you name it. So as I said, as we were sort of aligning to various frameworks in our business, having a management platform that could sort of scale with that as well. So the ConnectSecure platform is quite cost effective for us. We've been able to bundle it into our existing stack very, very attractively for our customers, which is good. And again, as Elliot said, we use it specifically to double check and verify what our RMM platform is doing, ensuring the patches are getting applied correctly. We do get some false positives out of that sometimes if the reporting is not quite aligned. But we've worked through that and been able to pretty identify quickly. A patch is applied, it's not quite showing up in ConnectSecure yet as remediated, but we can address that accordingly. Look, and on the third point, it wasn't really a challenge for us, but we found this market of being able to, in either one-off or ongoing scenarios, just consult on clients for a second opinion with other IT providers or their internal IT. And cybersecurity for us has become a tool to do scans on networks and form part of our stack. So we don't do penetration testing. We're not in that caliber of expertise, but we can definitely utilize this tool as our stack to go into a customer environment as a mutual third party, not seeking to win their business or change anything, but offer them a second eye over everything in their environment. Again, the list of actionable items it can provide our ConnectSecure is really helpful for a client. We can sit down with them at the end and say, look, this is where we think you're sitting in relation to, we often do the Essential 8 framework or NIST as well. Say this is where you're currently sitting based against other organizations. These are our recommendations, and sort of take it from there and we can hand it over. So it's opened up a good additional market. So, not just working with our existing fully managed clients, but also engaging with other clients on an ad hoc basis.
Perfect. Thanks for taking us through that. I'll probably reserve my questions once we get into the panel discussion, but appreciate you taking us through the challenges you saw and how ConnectSecure supported that. Just want to remind if anyone has any questions that they want to ask either Alex or Pre at the end of this, feel free to chuck that in the Q&A portion of Teams, and then we'll see if we can get to it at the end. So with that, I want to throw things over to Pre to just go over your challenges, what your experience was like with ConnectSecure.
Thanks, Elliot. So essentially, we're taking a lot of customers through Essential 8. We found it kind of helpful and useful for them to kind of just get started in their cybersecurity journey. I've used other sort of vulnerability management platforms in the past. A lot of them will, send you broke. They're quite expensive and quite intensive to get deployed. We looked at ConnectSecure, and it was so easy. You could tell it was designed for the MSPs. And essentially, what we've done now is added an offering to a customer when they start going down that level of Essential 8. We deploy ConnectSecure to their devices, run some scans, get some reports. It gives us the ability to kind of, scan publicly facing systems, which is great. Patching non-MS applications has been quite easy through that feature that's there. And the reports are, as Alex said, really simple in English with the sort of streetlight system where you can see the critical stuff and go, okay, we need to patch that now. What's the plan? And then we can rerun those reports and go back to the customer. We do a lot of the regular scans as well. So a lot of customers are aiming for level 2 maturity in Essential 8, where you've got to have that regular scanning. It makes it really simple for us to deploy and really simple for the reporting piece as well. So we just automate the most of that. The scanning of public-facing systems has been really valuable. I'll give you an example. We had a customer's website go live yesterday, and pretty much they were spamming from their website within 1 to 2 hours. We ran the external scan and found they were running versions of JavaScript from 2018. It found passwords were stored in clear text, and various things like that. So it wasn't good. But to be able to deploy that tool and be the hero to the customer to kind of go, we found all these things. Maybe next time talk to us when you're going live, and we can help you scan before you go live or understand what's happening with that system. So that's been really valuable. And again, a part of the Essential 8, you've got to scan your public-facing systems. So we use that tool to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Pre. On the sort of public-facing systems, when we first engaged, the attack surface mapping wasn't there. Have you had a chance to use that since it's been made available?
Yeah, I played with it the other night, and it's quite valuable. It actually showed you, everything that was there and what was accessible, and what you needed to look at and remediate. So really cool. And the fact that they're continually adding to the platform. I had a look at the PII stuff that came into the platform the other day as well, and I'm like, oh, I was literally having a conversation with a customer about this the other day. So fantastic platform that just keeps growing and growing, and it's just built for the MSPs, which makes it easy.
My mic keeps muting on me. Yeah, no, exactly. I think a lot of the work going into it, and there's a lot of resource being thrown to sort of delivering what MSPs are looking for. And one of the big things that came up is, as you mentioned, so things like PII and the attack surface mapping, particularly when it comes to supply chain risk. That is a big thing that a lot of companies, a lot of MSPs are looking at now, off the back of some of the key risks. Right, there was an MSP in New Zealand, which I've covered off many times before, end of last year, that had a massive impact in their realm, and that was purely due to a breach that occurred, right? That probably could have been mitigated through simple things like vulnerability management and attack surface monitoring. So those are definitely things that come up in conversations today. I appreciate you taking us through your challenges. So I want to move to sort of the roundtable discussion. I've got a few key questions that generally come up in my conversation as well that I could answer right in my own way, but I wanted to get your perspective on it. So the first one is, were there any challenges implementing ConnectSecure, and how did you overcome them? I know for a fact that you guys did have some initial challenges, but I wanted to get your perspective on it for the wider audience. Maybe I'll throw that out to Alex to get started.
Yeah, sure. No, we definitely did. I think there was quite a few emails back and forwards with myself, you, Elliot, and at the time my cybersec engineer that was with us. Look, I think for us implementing any new software is always a challenge. It was a brand new platform. We had to get trained on it. We had a few integration issues. Couldn't tell you if that was PSA end or ConnectSecure end. So there's always a bit of a funny bag there when you're trying to integrate with your existing systems. But no, look, we had, I think at the time, look, we had obviously direct access to ConnectSecure support and the PAX8 support team there as well. So I think look, we overcame those just by logging the tickets, providing the required information, and it was fairly seamless at the time. And I think since then, we've run into a couple of small technical issues or some partner feedback on the platform, and I can see that the process has evolved since we were first on board as a partner too. So it's vastly improved since then. So yeah, it's definitely some challenges, but nothing we couldn't go through. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Pre, your thoughts?
Yeah, we're pretty much exactly the same. We had an issue with performance on our instance, and working with the PAX8 team and the ConnectSecure guys, they fixed it, and it was really nice to have it fixed because it was a lot quicker, and similar integration and stuff like that. But that was a while ago, and I can see that they've just vastly improved the platform. So it's been great to know that they're working on it and they're building on it. It's been working quite well now.
Yeah, I can, at least from my perspective, I can speak to them providing Pax8, the Pax8 team, particularly the SEs, a lot of support and make sure that we're engaging appropriately, supporting our partner base with any challenges. They also generally turn bugs or issues around fairly quickly, and that's always subjective depending on what you consider quickly. But in many cases, when you compare it with others, right, we're talking about weeks or maybe a month to turn a lot of those around. I know in Alex's case, there was a particular issue where there was a patching misalignment, and Alex, hopefully I can sort of talk about this. But what we found is the ConnectSecure solution was scanning so deep, it was looking at different user profiles, right? And it found a mismatch on the user profile as opposed to the sort of default profile itself. So it is getting pretty deep in there, and it showed there was an application, I think it was Zoom at the time, that had an older version just at that particular user profile. So you're getting a lot of data through that. It might take some time to get used to, but once you understand how it all works, it will go a long way into sort of helping you support and provide that tangible data to your end clients. All right, moving on to the next question. If you have to share your sort of secret sauce, what was your go-to-market strategy? Did you bundle it? Was it a product sell? How did you push this to your clients? Pre, maybe I'll start with you this time.
So for us, it is an add-on at the moment. When they go down that path, we add that on to their existing managed services, and essentially it's a price per endpoint that we charge per month. And every quarter we'll generally sit down with the customer and go through it in a bit more detail rather than just your regular monthly reports and general conversation. We are very clear that we also don't include remediation in that price. That'll be a gotcha because you don't know what you're going to find, you don't know what's going to come out. So we're very clear in telling them we don't include the remediation in that monthly fee. We are in the process of bundling a security bundle for customers because a lot of customers have now got this service, and we're bundling in the SOC and various other things into one agreement as well. So that's in progress.
Alex, over to you.
Yeah, so we did it slightly differently. So we were already in the process of we'd sat down with one of our primary endpoint vendors, and we'd already made that transition into sort of co-managed XDR platforms and SOC style management and reporting. So we'd already actually increased our package pricing level of service to a lot of customers. So when this came through for us, the price point was actually reasonable that we actually slotted into all those customers on the new plans immediately. Anyone that saw on legacy stuff available as an add-on, and we had those discussions when it came time for reviews. But that was a huge win for us, especially comparing it to some other platforms at the time that were quite a bit more expensive. It would obviously, I sat down, looked at the numbers, and thought, we can absolutely take a very small hit to the gross margin there to get this additional insight into all of our customers' environments. And as you said earlier, the stuff we started getting out because we were going so deep was quite good, and stuff we hadn't thought about looking at and reviewing before. So every customer's endpoint was protected with state-of-the-art endpoint protection, and was patched with Windows and whatever third-party patching. I think it's limited to Adobe and that sort of stuff that our RMM does. But then seeing that Zoom had vulnerabilities. In fact, it was mostly video conferencing platforms that were across the board for some reason. It was, immediately we could just, jump in and just, apply some updates. For customers that are already on our managed plans for endpoint and patching, we were able to do those. And then similar to remediation as a whole, still, a lot, available separately, especially if it comes to, a firewall they have from their ISP that's not managed by us, and we've got to engage them to patch it. I've definitely come across a few Fortinets with that particular CVE. Obviously not included, but we can have that level of information now that we can go to them and say, look, we need to now engage your ISP at this level to resolve this issue and patch this. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. What was there any sort of pushback from clients with sort of the delivery of this, or did they just sort of understand that that was that was a sort of standard sort of best practice that you were delivering?
Yeah, it depended on the customer. So look, our agreements, have a room for we will change platforms and install as required based on to deliver our security stack. But we sat down with each, didn't sit down with every one of them, but we set up the notifications, sit down with key staff and said we're going to be rolling out a new agent essentially. And yeah, we had zero pushback. And especially when you say, "Oh, no additional cost," it was it's always welcome when you say something like that. So, and then again, once we started sending out the the information on that, they're like, "Oh wow, cool." So everyone's winning. They're getting some more information. We're double checking our processes and our existing tools, and everyone was pretty happy. Yeah.
For both of you, how has that helped with the pre-sales engagement to sort of identify net new clients?
Look, for us, yeah, it's been pretty good. So we never had sort of several times we've gone in and checked the network, right? You've got X number of switches, your firewall. We know the models, know the brands, sort of know the versions. But for us, yeah, this has been quite helpful in knowing some gaps where they fit, and so we can address those as part of onboarding and include a cost for that. So where our techs aren't left, doing extra hours just to patch something before they're onboarded, because if we don't patch it and then we onboard them, that's a bigger issue if something was to happen. So it's been good in that sense for us. Sorry?
Yeah, we're doing our first one now. So we had a customer reach out to us, or potential customer reach out to us, and wanted to start with that security front. So this Friday we're doing deployment of agents. So I'm quite excited because it's a new thing we haven't had before, and it's gonna be interesting. I won't share the details of what we've seen so far.
I imagine there's a lot. No, it's good to see you using it. I think it's one of the most unutilized function of ConnectSecure. Partners are focusing on supporting their existing clientele, but like I said, the unlimited security assessments allows you to go to market and take a different approach to it and sort of lead with a security first approach. All right. Next one. So we've sort of covered some objections, but were there any other sort of client objections that you sort of faced, and how did the ConnectSecure, I guess, reporting sort of address these concerns? Pre?
Yeah, so I think John's also asked quite a similar question about the noise that it creates. So we've had no objections from customers at all, but a couple of the IT managers freak out at the first report. And kind of go, oh wow, how do we address all of this? How do we get this under control? How am I going to track that the vulnerabilities are going down? And I kind of said, well, we can't control vulnerabilities going down. We can fix what we know, but next month I can guarantee you there'll be more, because they're just going to continue to come out. Again, the way that they address that with the critical, critical and urgent, or critical and high. Is good, right? Because we can say, well, we can address these critical ones quite quickly. Let's create a plan, and then we address that. And as long as they don't turn up on the next month's report, we're not going to have any issues. It's that kind of challenge. That vulnerability management is noisy, and you've got to have a process and a plan and communication with the customer to understand that noise and prioritize what's important. And then we have no problem.
Yeah, is that something that you build out yourself? Or are you leveraging more of the sort of recommendations that ConnectSecure spit out to you?
We're using ConnectSecure to give us those recommendations. Yeah,
perfect. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was sort of similar for us. We definitely had one or two customers that when we gave them initial reports, it was like, but aren't you guys patching this already? And obviously, we've got to then explain, oh, well, per the agreement, this is what's always covered. This is more information that we didn't have. And it was I think we had one tough conversation with the customer, but once we sort of sat down and explained it, look, we're not making these vulnerabilities, but now we can address them. We provide software and hardware and services from vendors that are reputable, and we make the assumption that they are doing their checks and balances, but that things are always missed. I think that particular Fortinet bug has been, an ongoing bug for Fortinet for some time, in different versions and iterations. So it's, but not knowing, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I think once we had that conversation with the customer that, this is purely a tool to, put us in the best stance of defensibility. Most have been really happy with it. Definitely haven't lost a customer over getting too much information out of it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. You sort of already covered this, but I wanted to maybe sort of expand on that, and without giving away numbers and things like that, how did using a vulnerability management tool, obviously in this case ConnectSecure, did that help grow your business at all? Do you see additional revenue streams coming through, or just the expansion upsell through implementing something like ConnectSecure?
For us, I think those customers that weren't on our already in progress new premium plan of cybersecurity services, we use this to get them there. We were able to show this is now included in this premium plan in addition to the stuff we were already trying to increase you onto for your own benefit and your own good. Again, once they were seeing these reports of stuff that should be covered off and monitored, we had some decent growth there. I mentioned we're also doing cybersecurity for customers, that's all we do for them. They've got an internal IT team, so we're sort of slotting in there as their outsourced cyber arm. That's been really good too, both on the internal and external scanning and vulnerability management. Yeah.
Great. Pre?
Yeah, it's very similar. We have we've got a lot of customers who are paying on top of their current agreements, and because that's happening, we're looking to bundle that in. But definitely seeing that uplift in revenue through that process, and actually a lot of education with customers as well. When you sit down and explain to them the report, they kind of go, "Wow, I didn't know that." And it helps them kind of understand the importance of cybersecurity, which then brings on more projects, secure score enhancements, all that kind of stuff flows on from there.
Yeah, a lot of it comes to changing the culture, and without having that tangible information and those data sets that basically make key decisions, it's basically going in and basically selling them something that you say they might need rather than you actually need it, because this is the gaps that we found through our security engagement or health check. All right. I think most of the questions in the panel in the chat have been answered, but there was one I wanted to, I think George mentioned. How are you keeping up with the changes? So Pre, you mentioned obviously some of the new updates that occurred, things like the PII module. That gets added in as part of the standard overall package, is not an add-in. How are you keeping up with them?
There's actually like they have a quarterly or a monthly partner catch up. I'm yet to make one. A partner call. Yet to make one. I'm really keen to. I'm not sure, Alex, if you've been in one, but I read the newsletters that come out from them and check out what's going on. And I'm in the platform all the time, so I kind of go, oh, new feature, new button. I'm going to go and play with that and not do my work for a little while. So that's how I kind of learn.
Yeah, that's it's probably a time zone issue, as George sort of mentioned. So we'll probably look at making it more in line with our APAC partners, particularly our NZ partners, so that you can engage at a suitable time and not midnight or whatever time it actually runs. So we'll look at doing that as well. One of the other questions that came from the audience was pricing this per endpoint. I think it was Chris from testing. Anything that responds consumes a license. So anything that's found on the network, so those printers, IP devices, IoT devices, things like that. What are you doing? Are you removing those from your management, or is that something that you're using as part of that additional conversation? Because again, going back to that first quote, if it's smart, it's vulnerable. How are you sort of approaching that?
So for us, we start with the client as deploying the lightweight agent. So we do that via RMM. So the initial stage for us in terms of onboarding a customer to the platform is lightweight agent only into their Windows servers endpoints, and then we run a probe to discover what else is on the network. So sort of starting off straight away, we know the number of endpoints and devices, so we can plan for that. And then we sort of use that, we investigate what else is on the network, printers, switches, everything that sort of phones home. And then we provide them an additional cost for that, if they so desire. If they don't, look, we've honestly kept it running for a couple of months and shown them sort of evidence of, well, we really should be monitoring it anyway. As I said, so the costings for it, it's obviously tiered in the number of the more you have and the more you monitor, the cheaper the per unit cost gets. And so it is so cost effective that we can wear those extra couple of dollars for a couple of months to get sort of additional information that, look, we really should be, it's only going to cost you X number of dollars more to have everything else outside of your primary endpoint devices covered and checked.
And an expansion on that, and I'll throw it off to Pre in a second, is are you also supporting things like remote workforce, work from home type users? Are you purely doing that just through the lightweight agent?
Yeah, purely through the lightweight agent. Look, it's interestingly enough, some of our customers are really trying to force people back into the office anyway. They're having uphill battles with that regardless. So lightweight agent, standard on the device, so we can at least know what's going on the device in terms of vulnerability side of things. It becomes a sticky situation to then put a probe onto people's home networks and understand sort of what they've got going on. It sort of breaches, what we cover in our agreements. Really, it becomes a very grey area. So we haven't gone down that path yet of, let's monitor your home router as well to know. I know TP-Link or D-Link, there was a few brands released just the other week with, vulnerabilities across the board for home routers. Not something we've gone down the path yet of, but certainly something we could explore by just, putting the probe agent on a device and checking out what's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the last ACSC cybersecurity report, it did mention, it highlighted actually that there was hundreds of thousands of home routers that were left exposed because of key best practices not being put in place, whether it's being, having patched to the recent versions or just changing the basic username and password from the defaults. So that's potentially an opportunity you could look at and others could look at. It is a fairly larger task because obviously you have to probe it, but that's where you could potentially use the external scans to try and monitor that. How I sort of guide partners through that is maybe add that as a sort of very high-end premium tier for like VIP services. So maybe monitor the executive team for those businesses and their home devices because they're probably the most at risk. Pre, your thoughts?
Yeah, very similar fashion, but we have lightweight, on all devices. Most of our customers don't allow people working from home on their own personal device, so it becomes quite easy to just have that lightweight agent everywhere. The trick for us is, the scan time, because a lot of people, let's say they work from home, their laptops might not be on for a couple of days, and we miss those sort of scan cycles. So we're just trying to pick up those scan cycles to get them included. But yeah, it's I'm just trying to think of I might go back to you, Elliot, while I think of the rest of the answer for that one.
Yep, no problems. No, that's fine. We've got about 6 minutes left, so we'll keep things moving along. The final question, I guess, is there any additional advice you might give, your peers, the MSPs in the room and otherwise, looking to roll out some sort of vulnerability management tool?
Do it.
Yeah. Look, sounds very salesy, but I've actually found, like, I've used Qualys, I've used Nessus, I've used a lot of platforms before. ConnectSecure is just built MSP driven, right? Like it's the way they've built the product, the way they've built the pricing, the platform. It's really simple. It doesn't make it. It's not hard. It's quite easy to deploy, quite easy to understand. I think there's a question in the chat about if there's pro services for Pax8 or ConnectSecure helping people get going. I don't know if there is, but I'm sure that it's become quite easy now that Alex and I have dealt with all the bugs, and we're actually running the platform. But do it, and if you have questions, I'm available. Like, I think they could share my email address. I'm happy to chat, show you guys what I've done, and help in any way I can. To answer questions or see what we've done to implement it, I'm here as well. So, yeah, do it.
Yeah, we're the same. I think regardless if it's ConnectSecure or another product, obviously, for us, our focus has been, number one, making sure everything's good at home before going to customers. So in trying to align with the framework, every single one of them mentions some sort of vulnerability scanning management remediation, right? So regardless of the vendor or the product it is, you should definitely have one. And it's an easy way to, provide that second opinion on the other products you're using, and just making sure you're covered off both internally and for your clients. The last thing you need, right, is client being impacted by a 2-3 year old vulnerability, Plex, when it could have been easily patched. Forever and a day, I think the largest number of vulnerabilities we were getting at one point was just Chrome updates. And you know how easy it is to update Chrome? Just relaunch your browser. But do people do that? No. got to have to reopen all my tabs, and even though it opens them automatically. So when we start looking at just send a blanket email out to XYZ customer. Can everyone just don't even restart your computer, just restart Chrome, and you'll have the latest version, and all these critical vulnerabilities will be repaired and patched. It's pretty easy to utilize, and
No, I appreciate that feedback. I think you basically say everything I say in my calls about ConnectSecure and vuln management in general anyway. No, thank you for jumping on here. We're almost on time, but I want to finish off with just sort of some next steps anyway. We didn't get a chance to answer all the questions, so we will try to get around to answering all the questions for those who asked.